This is an old story from way back in the early 1930s when my great-grandfather was in India. India was then still under British rule. Huge colonial bungalows and high-end cars for the wealthy, but not for him. He was from a very poor family in a tiny village with fields and jungle around it. Owning a car? Not a chance. Those were reserved for British officers and wealthy landlords. As for him, he had horses, old sturdy ones that walked slowly and steadily. That was how he got around, riding to surrounding villages to visit friends or exchange what little he had. Life was hard and simple, but he managed. One afternoon, he explained it to my grandpa, who explained it to me. He rode out to visit a friend in the next village over. It was a sunny day, the sun beating down, and dust rising from the hooves of his horse. He lingered longer than he intended, sipping cups of chai and swapping stories. By the time he prepared to leave, the sun was going down, and the sky was orange. Night was falling fast. The main road home was long, winding, dusty, and nearly twice the distance. But he had a shortcut through the jungle. It was dark and tight, but quicker. He had taken it before with no trouble. So he turned his horse from the road and into the woods. The jungle was dense. Tall trees blocked out the light. Vines hung low, and the air smelled thick of damp earth and leaves. Birds sang, then went silent as the shadows darkened. He held the horse steady, humming a tune to himself, loose reins in his hand. That was when he saw it, a little goat, just sitting beside a tree, little, white, and softly bleating like it was lost. No herd, no shepherd, just the little goat. He reined in the horse and squinted at it. Poor thing, he thought, must have wandered off. He figured he would scoop it up, take it out of the jungle, and leave it somewhere safe. Simple kindness, right? He dismounted the horse, his boots clomping on the ground, and approached. The goat didn't flee, just sat there, staring. He scooped it up, as light as a small sack of grain, and placed it on the back of the horse, behind the saddle. It didn't kick or move, which was odd, but he didn't care. He placed one foot in the stirrup to mount when he halted. Something was amiss. He glanced over at the goat, and oh dear, its horns and hooves were not normal. Its horns curved backward the wrong way. The hooves, they pointed the opposite direction, as if its legs were twisted. His heart was pounding. This was not a goat. Terror hit him hard. He pulled his foot away and pushed the thing off the horse. It crashed to the ground with a thud, and he mounted quickly, kicking the horse to make it run. As the horse ran away, he began muttering prayers to his guru, fast and loud. He was Sikh and always kept that faith close to his heart. Waheguru, Waheguru, he whispered again, his voice shaking, urging the horse along the trees. Then he heard it, a woman's voice, cold and cutting, right behind him. Your prayer saved you today, she said, but I don't know how you'll escape next time. His blood chilled. He turned his head around, and there she was. No goat, just a woman, standing where it fell. She was tall and thin, wrapped in a torn sari, her black hair wild like the jungle itself. Her eyes were huge, wide open, staring at him. She didn't blink. She just stared as the horse took him away. He did not rest until he came to the village, gasping, sweat dripping down his face. He burst open the door and reported it all to his wife. She went white and said it was like a churel, a fairy tale witch, one that tricks men and turns them into beasts. He did not sleep that night and left the lantern burning, muttering words until morning. He thought that was the end of it. He was mistaken. A few weeks later, he had to ride once more. Same village, same friend. He stayed on the main road, no jungle cuts. Evening had come, and the sky was purple. He was halfway home when he heard it, soft hooves behind him. He turned around. Nothing, just the open road. but the sound kept going on, as if whatever was making it was following him at the same pace. Faster, it rode faster. His horse snorted, its ears twitching, nostrils flaring. Then he heard bleating, far off like a goat. His gut turned in knots. He chanted again, louder, urging the horse to gallop faster. The sounds vanished just as he was nearing the edge of the village. He glanced back. Nothing but settling dust. Strange things started happening at home. One evening, he awoke to the scratching, slow and sharp, on the wooden door. He grabbed a stick and opened the door slightly. No one was there. There was only a heap of twigs outside, in the shape of a circle. The following day, he noticed hoof prints around the house, small like a goat's, but deep, as if pressed in. His wife burned sage and prayed over the area, but nothing happened. Sometimes he heard whispers, her voice, in the same cold tone, through the walls. Next time, she would say. He would look outside. Only shadows were there. Then came market day. He rode into town and hitched his horse by the stalls. A young boy, about 10 years old, ran up to him with big eyes. "Mister, your horse, it's got a rider." He turned to see. The saddle was empty, but the boy insisted he had seen a woman sitting there, her arms up, swaying. My great-grandfather wrote it off and said the boy was dreaming. But when he let go of the reins, they were cold, icy, as if they'd been dipped in freezing water. He rode home quickly, his heart pounding. The real surprise came years later. He'd moved by then. New village, new house, leaving it all behind. One night, he was fixing a cart outside when he found it. A small horn, goat-sized, hidden in the earth at his doorstep. Black, shiny, warm to the touch. He'd never seen it before, hadn't carried it there. He threw it into the fire, watched it burn. That's when the nightmare started. He'd dream of her, the witch, standing in the jungle, arms raised, swaying. No goat now, just her, smiling with teeth too sharp. She'd point at him, call his name, his given name, things he never told anyone. He'd wake up gagging, as if something was sitting on his chest. It didn't stop there. One evening, he was out with his horse, feeding it outside the shed, when everything went still. Birds fell silent, wind died. He heard bleating, loud, close. Looked up, and there she was, in the field, same sari, same tangled hair, arms raised, rocking. His horse reared, ran away, left him there by himself. She didn't move, just stared, her eyes glowing red, like embers in the dark. He ran inside, locked the door. Next morning, the horse was back, quiet, tied up, like nothing was amiss. But its mane was braided, tight little knots he couldn't quickly undo. He explained all this to my grandpa when he was an old man, his voice trembling and his eyes darting around the room as if she still lived. He said she was a witch, bound to that jungle, just waiting for someone to fill her place or take them. After that, he slept with a prayer book under his pillow and never went out alone at night. But the odd thing about it is, when he passed away, they once more found that horn. It was the same horn he burned, across his chest, warm and charred. Nobody knew how it appeared there. My grandpa buried it deep, outside the house, and prayed on the ground. I was told this story as a kid, huddled by the fire as Grandpa spoke in a low voice. I never thought it was true, until last year. I was in India, on ancestral property, along that same jungle road, paved now, but still eerie. I felt eyes on me, heavy eyes. I saw a circle of sticks around a tree, just as he described it. That night, in my hotel room, I dreamed of her. Wild hair, arms raised, swaying. She called my name softly. I awoke to a scratch on my arm. 3 lines, fresh. The window was closed. Now I hear soft bleating sometimes when I'm by myself. I don't know what she's looking for, but I think she's still out there waiting.